You say the big problem with these talks are that they are focused on the wrong thing, that they are looking at tactical instead of strategic, and that any talk of progress we're hearing is really just cosmetic. What do you mean?
They want to do a deal. So China knows how to do a deal. They've done this many times in the past. They open up the wallet, they buy a lot of things from the U.S., and they hope we go away. And, you know, the Trump administration, to its credit, says we're not going away. Yeah. We want to deal with these bigger issues on technology, intellectual property, forced technology transfer, industrial policy, all the stuff that they have assembled in a big case that's been put together by the trade representative, Robert Lighthizer, a case that unfortunately is based on flawed and faulty evidence.
I don't know what flawed or faulty evidence you're talking about, but we have heard from business leader after business leader who's come on and said, look, it's just not a level playing field. We can't do the things here that they can do there. You have to have a joint venture there. You have to have all these issues. These are things that were eventually supposed to roll off when they joined the WTO. None of that progress has been made. And we hear that from not only business leaders, but politicians and trade reps who have been following all this.
Well, Becky, and there's always this notion of dueling anecdotes. I mean, for every story you hear that's bad, there's stories that are on the other side. In the interest of full disclosure, I was a senior executive in a joint venture between Morgan Stanley and the China Construction Bank. We built China's first investment bank, CICC. I was actively involved in the JV. At no point was I taken into a room, blindfolded, twisted my arm, and forced to turn over anything. When you do a JV, you participate willingly to build a shared business based on shared talent, shared processes, and technology.
I'll give you that. You're right. Any company that's gone in and agreed to set up a joint venture did that.
The allegation is forced.
But what about, well, you can't, the allegation would be that you couldn't be there if you didn't agree to the joint venture, and that may be true too. So, okay.
We wanted to be there. We wanted to participate in the biggest market.
So Trump just tweeted, talks with China are going very well, just to get that out of the way. He does that. Okay.
Right.
Stephen, in the past, before we got into this big brouhaha with China, we always talk to you about China. And
no, I haven't heard from you in a while.
No, you can come on. And John Rutledge at Softenot. And I always needle you guys that you're on the payroll for China half the time, or at least it seems like it, because you're very friendly with their intentions. Did we characterize their intentions? Is hegemony by 2025 or 2030 not something they want to do? Should we welcome that? Are they our friends? Or because you always allayed my fears about worrying about China. Do you still feel that way?
Well, Joe, I think you probably mischaracterized them and me. I've tried to play it pretty straight.
I know, but it didn't come across to me that way.
Well, that's okay. You know,
perception is everything.
Perception becomes reality after a while.
We shouldn't fear the Chinese at this point in terms of global domination.
I don't think it's a zero-sum game, which is the way you're putting it. I think it can be a win-win. We need technology for our purposes to deal with some of our productivity issues at home. They need it for their purposes to stay the course of development.
Right.
The question that has been raised is, are they doing it unfairly? Are they cheating to acquire our technology?
And you say no?
And I'd say there are issues, and Becky just pointed to one, in terms of market access and JV structure.
People that deal there.
Let's talk about intellectual property theft, because that's been a big issue, particularly for technology.
Okay, look, let's talk about intellectual property theft. I teach a course on China at Yale, and so in part of preparing for this course, I looked at the state-of-the-art evidence that's been assembled to estimate the intellectual property theft that occurs every year between China and the U.S. It's put out by the IP Commission, latest estimates in 2017, chaired by the illustrious Dennis Blair, former director of national intelligence, and John Huntsman, current ambassador to China. The report is not worth the paper it's printed on. There's no evidence of anything. They give you a range between $200 and $600 billion of intellectual property theft.
Do you think all this is bogus? Every time we have a CEO who comes on the set here who says,
no, the CEOs are talking their own experience. I'm not going to challenge them, Andrew. But I think that, you know, when you try to generalize for the economy as a whole, and you have a report put out by something called the IP Commission, headed up by two illustrious patriotic Americans, that has an estimate that ranges anywhere from $200 to $600 billion a year. I mean, even by Wall Street standards, where I used to work, that's a pretty wide range, you know?
I would say even 200 billion is a problem. I mean, I just look back at incidences like the last time there was one of those viruses that affected Microsoft. It affected particularly China and a lot of cities there because they had never gotten the patch because they were using pirated copies all over the place.
It's all bad stuff. I'm not defending any of that, but I just think we have to be really careful. We've built a case based on this report of the IP Commission, based on 182-page documents published by U.S. Trade Representative Lighthizer last March, that has led to tariffs, trade wars, and great risk to the U.S., China, and the global economy.
What do you want to see happen?
The case is not a good case.
What do you want to see happen in the trade talks? Would it be okay if they just papered this over and we moved on with it? If most of these, if these are boogeymen, I guess, to the extent of how bad things are.
I think the issues that have been raised are important issues that must be addressed, especially the point on market access. My solution, if you were to ask me, would be to finally make progress on coming together on a bilateral investment treaty between the U.S. and China. You know what that would do? That would eliminate ownership caps, eliminate the need to do joint ventures, and take the issue of forced technology transfer off the table. The issue, again, to make the case that this transfer is forced is spurious at best. So take it off the table and get away from joint ventures. You don't like them. Others don't like them either. Right. So if you have a bilateral investment treaty, you don't have that requirement.